to Discover You Radio's discussions. The full spectrum. The full spectrum. Discover You Radio's discussions. The full spectrum is proudly sponsored by Counterpoint Publishing and is directed and produced under the guidance of Will Stenner. Now, let's uncover the story behind the genius of this soon-to-be legacy after this short word from one of our sponsors. Calling all music lovers. Have you heard of the DML conspiracy? Straight from Houston, this alternative indie rock band is breaking boundaries and delivering music that hits you right in the soul with powerful lyrics, unmatched passion, and an unforgettable sound. The DML conspiracy is quickly becoming a must-have on your playlist. Want in? Follow them now on your favorite social media platforms for updates, exclusive content, and behind-the-scenes stories. Head over to dmlconspiracy.com to request your favorite tracks on the radio and elevate your Spotify vibe. Don't just listen to music. Experience it with the DML Conspiracy. That's dmlconspiracy.com, where music lives forever. Welcome to Discover You Radio's discussion. Stay tuned as Robert Simmons and Rita Fox go into a deep dive as we discover this legendary legacy together.
Imagine a person walks into a crowded hospital at 3
Okay.
and they have a surgery scheduled for 5.
Right. So they're early.
Right, they're early. But instead of checking in, they completely bypass the waiting room, they ignore the front desk, and they just push open the doors to an active operating theater.
Oh, wow. Just walking right in.
Just marching right in, interrupting a doctor mid-diagnosis, and demanding to be put under anesthesia right that second because, they quote-unquote have somewhere to be.
I mean, you would look at that person and call them completely unhinged. You'd call security immediately.
Exactly. It's an objective breakdown of societal rules. But if you transplant that exact same behavior, that exact same distortion of reality into the automotive service lane...
Oh, let me guess.
That is just a regular Tuesday morning.
It really is, isn't it? It's this profound shift in how human beings process reality. Because the second the sliding glass doors of a dealership open, it's like perfectly rational, mature adults suddenly decide that the basic laws of physics, time, and, well, human decency have just been suspended.
The structure of logic just completely vanishes.
Yeah. The expectation of precision that we usually associate with, like a mechanical breakdown, it just evaporates. And what we are left with is this incredibly murky behavioral landscape. I mean, it is an ecosystem of human stress, very fragile egos, and entirely unrealistic expectations, all colliding at a single counter.
Which makes this specific exploration so vital for us today. We are jumping into a brand new deep dive, and we're immersing ourselves in some really extensive excerpts from a book called Your Guide to Customer Service, the Mirror Edition.
Which is such an amazing title, by the way.
It really is. And the author, Brandon Eagle, he is not looking at this from, some theoretical ivory tower. He's been entrenched in the automotive industry since 1992.
Decades.
Yeah, decades. Specifically with Honda since 2002. So we are talking about a massive structural foundation of experience as a service advisor. He has written tens of thousands of repair orders. He has navigated the absolute best and, unfortunately, the absolute worst of human interaction.
Right.
And what really sets this text apart from a structural perspective is that he is not complaining. He is documenting.
This is a documentation of reality because usually, right, when we encounter a book with customer service in the title, it's a manual for the business.
It's corporate literature.
Exactly. It's a corporate guide on how to bend over backward, how to delight the guest at any cost, how to just swallow your pride and always say yes. But this book flips that entirely. It is I guess you could call it a sarcastically, sneaky, brutally honest mirror held firmly up to the customer.
It forces the consumer to evaluate their own structural role in the transaction.
It really does. It forces you to look at your own reflection. Because reading through Eagle's experiences, the empathetic shock is just staggering. You realize that these service advisors are essentially functioning as unpaid therapists.
That's a very accurate operational assessment.
Right. I mean, they're dealing with people who only ever show up when something incredibly expensive and vital to their livelihood is broken. Literally, no one goes to the dealership because they're having a great day.
Never. They're there because there's a systemic failure in their transportation.
Exactly. They're massively inconvenienced, and the advisor is expected to be this mandated emotional punching bag, just absorbing all that ambient frustration with a compulsory, corporate smile.
The service lane really is a fascinating structural ecosystem to examine broken logic, because we're looking at how entitlement fundamentally rewrites the rules of engagement. Service advisors are positioned in this nearly impossible middle ground, acting as the primary translators between furious, financially stressed customers and deeply analytical, process-driven technicians.
It's like being caught between a tornado and a supercomputer.
That is exactly the dynamic. So if we establish a golden rule for this deep dive right at the start, it has to be a challenge directed squarely at you, the listener.
Ooh, yes. Prepare yourselves.
As we unpack these archetypes today, as we structurally dissect the behavioral patterns and the logic loops that Eagle outlines in the book, you have to ask yourself a deeply uncomfortable question. And you need to be honest. Have you ever, even a little bit, been that customer?
Oh, it's such a tough question to ask yourself, because I think we've all had moments where stress gets the better of us. But let's pull back the curtain on the grand illusion that generates so much of this friction in the first place, right?
The corporate fantasy.
The corporate fantasy. Brandon Eagle points out this massive foundational disconnect between what corporate training dictates from a boardroom and what actually transpires in the trenches of a service drive. Because those corporate training videos, they're produced in a total vacuum.
A completely sterile environment.
Exactly. The lighting is perfect. There's no ambient noise. You definitely don't have tow trucks dropping off smoking, leaking vehicles in the background. It is just one impeccably dressed advisor and one eternally patient customer.
And the corporate mandate issued in those videos is absolute. It's a binary system of success or failure. They demand that the advisor must always make immediate eye contact with every single customer who walks through the door, offer a warm greeting, and treat the person in front of them as the center of the universe.
That sounds lovely, right?
In a controlled, theoretical environment, it sounds like excellent hospitality. But if you analyze the reality of the service drive, it is an operational hazard.
Wait, an operational hazard. Break that down for me, because I think most people just see it as polite.
Well, let's look at what the advisor is actually doing when they are staring at their screen. Corporate is asking one single human being to simultaneously function as a greeter, a service writer, a cashier, a phone operator, a warranty administrator, a quality control inspector, and, as you noted earlier, a crisis counselor.
That's just too many hats for one person.
It's structurally impossible to sustain without error. If an advisor is in the middle of entering a complex warranty claim, a process where a single transposed digit in a 17-character VIN number or a miscoded labor operation means the manufacturer kicks the claim back.
And the dealership just eats the cost.
The dealership eats thousands of dollars. So looking up to cheerfully say hello to a walk-in is actively detrimental to the business. It breaks the cognitive chain required for that data entry.
Oh, I see. Because eye contact isn't just a polite gesture. Psychologically, it's the universal human signal that a transaction has begun.
Precisely.
The second that advisor locks eyes with you, your internal clock starts ticking. You believe you now have their full, undivided attention. But if they're desperately trying to close out an invoice so the customer standing right next to you can finally leave, or, and this is scary, if they are meticulously typing out the exact conditions of a terrifying brake failure so the technician doesn't miss a lethal safety issue.
Right. The stakes are physical safety.
Saying, "I'll be right with you," in that moment isn't actually good service. It's a fabricated reality they are forced to perform just to appease a corporate checklist.
My pushback against corporate logic is very straightforward. If a business wants a dedicated greeter, the structural solution is to hire a dedicated greeter.
Right.
It is fundamentally absurd to punish the person managing the high-stakes logistics of 50 vehicles for failing to make small talk. As Eagle points out, corporate expects the air traffic controller to also walk down the aisle and serve the in-flight peanuts.
That analogy is so perfect. I mean, you would never want the person landing your plane to be pouring diet sodas.
Never. But the enforcement mechanism for this fantasy is where the real structural damage occurs. Corporate uses the most destructive weapon in the retail arsenal, the Customer Service Index or the CSI survey.
Oh, reading about how the CSI survey is weaponized against the very people trying to help is just infuriating. Because corporate entities set these completely unrealistic, perfection-only targets. Anything less than a flawless score, like a 10 out of 10, is categorized as a total failure.
A 0. Mathematically, a 9 equals a 0.
Which forces advisors into a position of absolute vulnerability. They literally have to beg customers for perfect scores for services that are inherently imperfect.
The injustice of the CSI metric is structural. Let's trace the operational path of a typical repair. An advisor executes their role flawlessly. They write the order accurately, they communicate the costs clearly, they set realistic expectations, and they manage the timeline perfectly.
So they do everything right.
Everything right. But an hour later, a technician in the back of the shop gets distracted and leaves a drain plug slightly loose. The vehicle goes home, and oil drips all over the customer's immaculate driveway. Now, the customer is entirely justified in their anger.
Of course, I'd be furious.
But who absorbs the structural punishment?
The advisor does.
Exactly. The advisor's compensation, their bonus structure, their ability to literally pay their own mortgage is tied directly to that CSI score. They take a massive financial hit for a mechanical failure they did not touch and could not physically control.
It functions as institutionalized emotional extortion. You're demanding that one person act as the human shield for every single mistake made under that roof, absorb the vitriol, manage fixing the mechanical issue, and then plead with the enraged customer not to destroy their livelihood by clicking a 7 instead of a 10 on an emailed survey.
It's an imbalanced transfer of power.
It really is. It shifts an immense, disproportionate amount of power directly into the hands of the customer. And as human nature dictates, when people realize they hold unchecked power over someone else's paycheck, a certain percentage of them will absolutely weaponize it.
Which brings us to the specific ways customers warp their environment. And it usually starts with the manipulation of time. Eagle categorizes several entitlement archetypes, and the underlying logic they all share is fascinating.
The psychology is so wild.
They genuinely believe they possess the ability to bend time and operational schedules to accommodate what we can accurately describe as main character syndrome.
Oh, main character syndrome perfectly encapsulates the vibe of a service drive. It's this deeply entrenched, almost subconscious belief that the dealership's entire schedule was constructed solely around their life. The advisor's focus belongs exclusively to them by divine right, and every other person sitting in the waiting room is just like a background extra in their personal movie.
So let's systematically examine the first archetype, the early bird.
Yes.
The early bird is the individual who schedules a 10:30 a.m. appointment, but intentionally arrives at 10, marches up to the counter, and demands to be processed immediately.
Right, because they're there.
Right. The internal logic loop driving this behavior is completely detached from operational reality. The early bird tells themselves, I took the initiative, I showed up early, I have important places to be, therefore my personal schedule holds more weight, and the business must accelerate to match my pace.
They don't view arriving early as a personal choice regarding their own commute. They view it as earning a VIP fast pass. They will literally physically bypass the people who actually schedule appointments, stand at the desk, and loudly announce, I'm here for my 10:30, but I'm in a huge rush.
But time, in a service environment, is a physical allocation of resources. It is not a suggestion. A 10:30 appointment signifies that the management has strategically allocated a physical bay, a specialized lift, and a uniquely trained technician for that specific window.
Showing up early doesn't build a new bay.
Precisely. Showing up at 10 does not magically erase the 3 vehicles that were checked in while the early bird was still eating breakfast. Eagle provides an analogy in the text that strips away the automotive context to show how ridiculous this logic is.
Remind me of that one.
He equates it to walking into a movie theater at 3:30 for a film that starts at 5, tracking down the manager, and demanding they start the projector right now simply because you are sitting in your seat.
That is so true. It is pure, unfiltered ego. And the fallout is entirely predictable. When the advisor maintains the boundary and politely explains that vehicles are processed in the order they were scheduled, the early bird processes that reality check as a severe personal insult.
The violation of their status.
Exactly. They will go online and leave a blistering 1-star review complaining about waiting forever and terrible service, utterly blind to the fact that they were not punished for arriving early. They were simply reminded that other human beings exist and have equal value.
Then we encounter what is essentially the aggressive cousin of the early bird, the appointment star. This is the individual who walks through the sliding doors, completely ignores the brightly colored "please check in here" sign, physically bypasses the designated line, and loudly interrupts an advisor who is mid-sentence with another customer.
This archetype highlights a critical, really dangerous confusion between being expected and being entitled. Their internal narrative dictates, I booked a time, I am physically present, therefore all other activity in this building must cease.
They have operational blinders on.
Total blinders. They do not perceive the complex warranty claim being typed out. They do not register the anxiety of the customer currently standing at the desk whose transmission just failed on the highway. They see only three things: a counter, a servant, and themselves.
And interrupting an advisor mid-task is not just rude, it is a profound structural risk to quality control. If an advisor is carefully documenting the nuanced symptoms of an intermittent electrical short and someone starts shouting their name over the shoulder of the current customer, the advisor's train of thought is derailed.
They lose the thread.
They might miss a critical diagnostic detail. The appointment star is not being efficient. They are actively increasing the statistical probability of an error on someone else's expensive repair, and ironically, potentially on their own. Maintaining boundaries in this scenario is not about the advisor having an attitude, it is a mandatory safety protocol.
That's such a good point. And Eagle coaches his advisors to hold that line with absolute firmness, to look at the interrupter and simply state, I will be right with you the moment I finish helping this guest.
Which is the only structurally sound response.
Because if the advisor drops their current task to appease the interruption, it creates a behavioral reward. It teaches the appointment star that bulldozing through social boundaries yields immediate positive results.
You are reinforcing bad data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if we want to talk about the most stressful manipulation of time, we really have to look at the end of the day, the phenomenon of last-minute Sally or last-minute Larry.
The last-minute pickup. The operational reality of this situation is stark. The day has concluded, the front doors are locked, the registers are balanced, the point-of-sale systems are shut down, the cashiers have clocked out and gone home.
The day's done.
It is 15 minutes past closing, and Sally is violently banging her wedding ring against the locked glass, waving dramatically and yelling through the weather stripping, I know you guys are closed, but I just need my car real quick.
Those two words, real quick, do an astonishing amount of heavy lifting in the minds of consumers.
They obscure the entire operational process.
Completely. In Sally's internal narrative, the request is totally frictionless. She just needs an employee to pick up a piece of metal, a key, and hand it to her. She has completely divorced herself from the cascading reality of what she is actually demanding.
Let's break down the actual step-by-step process she is demanding.
Let's do it.
She is asking the advisor to violate security protocols, re-enter the locked building, reboot secure, time-locked point-of-sale systems, relog into multiple dealer management terminals, restart the entire end-of-day accounting and batching process, and perform unpaid, uncontracted overtime.
All for her.
All because she actively chose to ignore the posted hours of operation that hundreds of other people successfully managed to navigate that same day.
She is taking her own poor planning, her own total disregard for the schedule, and weaponizing it into a manufactured emergency for the staff. When she says, I just need my car, what she is actually communicating to the employee behind the glass is, my time is immensely valuable, and your personal life, your dinner with your family, your need for rest is entirely disposable.
Which is structurally abusive.
It is. And Eagle's coaching on this is uncompromising. He tells his advisors, let the physical lock do its job.
A hard boundary.
Yes. You do not reverse the shutdown of a multi-million-dollar facility because someone is waving in the doorway. If you capitulate, you establish a precedent that closing times are merely suggestions.
Which seamlessly transitions into a different, more insidious form of operational manipulation. Customers don't just try to bend time, they try to out-talk the system to avoid paying for expertise. Eagle refers to this as the free labor hustle.
Oh, this one is so common.
It centers around a behavioral pattern called the rewording ritual. To truly understand the structural absurdity and the underlying logic of this, we need to role-play it.
Okay, I am so ready for this.
I will take on the role of the policy-bound professional advisor, and you take on the role of the persistent customer who is actively trying to shrink the request to make it sound free.
Oh, I can absolutely channel this specific energy. Okay, so I walk straight up to your desk. I haven't scheduled an appointment. I haven't given you my keys. And I just lean in and say, hey, can you just step outside with me and listen to this weird noise my engine is making real quick? Just tell me what you think it is.
I understand you're concerned about a noise. For our own protection, and to ensure we give you an accurate, safe answer, we have to write a proper repair order so a trained, certified technician can put the vehicle on a lift and evaluate it.
Right. No, I totally get that process.
Ugh.
But this is just a really simple, tiny squeak. I don't need a whole official repair order generated.
Okay.
I just want your personal opinion. Can you just step out to the parking lot and give it a quick listen?
As I mentioned, to diagnose any mechanical issue, we need to officially check the vehicle into the system. The technician is the experienced professional who has the tools and the environment needed to evaluate that noise safely.
Okay, but what if we do it off the record? Like if you just had to guess right now, I'm not asking you to pull it into the shop and fix it. I just need you to tell me what it might be so I have some peace of mind before I drive home.
We don't guess, and we don't perform off-the-record diagnostics in the parking lot. I would be more than happy to write up a work order for you right now so we can get you a definitive answer.
And scene. Oh my gosh. When you are the one playing that character, it feels incredibly manipulative.
It is an attempt to bypass the established financial structure.
Exactly. But in the rewarder's head, they view themselves as entirely reasonable. They tell themselves, I'm just asking for a tiny favor. I'm just clarifying. They operate on this weird assumption that if they just keep persisting, if they keep making the physical request sound smaller and smaller, just to listen, just to guess, the advisor will eventually feel socially awkward or silly saying no.
What the customer fails to realize is that they're constructing a massive structural liability trap. Let's systematically shred the tactic you just employed.
Let's shred it.
Why does the advisor refuse to walk outside? It has absolutely nothing to do with stubbornness or laziness. It is entirely about legal and physical protection. If an advisor capitulates, walks out to the parking lot, listens to that simple squeak, and casually says, oh, it sounds like a loose serpentine belt, they have just created undocumented catastrophic liability.
Oh, because they're on the hook now.
Precisely. Because if that squeak is actually the sound of a failing wheel bearing, and the customer drives away feeling safe, and the wheel detaches on the highway at 70 miles per hour, who bears the legal responsibility?
The dealership does. Because the immediate defense in the lawsuit is going to be, well, the dealership professional stepped outside, listened to it, and told me it was just a belt. They said I was fine.
Exactly the danger. The customer is demanding that the advisor act as a drive-by diagnostician, a role they are explicitly not trained for. The customer is asking the advisor to undermine the entire technical staff. A seemingly small exception in the parking lot carries full-size, devastating consequences.
It's terrifying when you frame it legally like that.
If the advisor's answer doesn't change after the customer has rephrased the question 3 different ways, it is because the laws of liability and company policy do not change just because your request is asked in a softer tone of voice.
Right. It's a deliberate attempt to shift all the physical and financial risk entirely onto the business for absolutely zero compensation, which connects directly to another deeply frustrating archetype, the diagnostic denier.
A profound misunderstanding of labor.
Total misunderstanding. This is the customer who desperately wants the answer. They absolutely need the vehicle fixed, but they vehemently, aggressively refuse to pay for the thinking. The scenario usually plays out like this. The advisor calls and says, great news, we found the root cause of the issue. The diagnostic fee is $150 and the actual repair will be $300.
Standard procedure.
And the customer instantly fires back, well, if I'm doing the $300 repair with you, you need to waive the $150 diagnostic fee.
The underlying structural premise of that demand is that the intellectual labor required to find the problem has no standalone value.
Wait, hold on. Let me stop you right there because I know exactly what someone listening right now is yelling at their dashboard.
Go ahead.
They're thinking, but the mechanic is literally just plugging a digital scanner into a port under the steering wheel. It takes 2 minutes to read a screen. Why on earth does a diagnostic fee cost $150 for a 2-minute scan?
That widespread assumption is the exact myth that devalues the entire automotive profession. The customer is completely misunderstanding what they are fundamentally purchasing.
They see the tool, not the brain.
Exactly. You are not paying for the physical 2 seconds it takes a human hand to plug a plastic connector into an OBD2 port. You are paying for the tens of thousands of dollars that the technician personally invested in that proprietary diagnostic computer.
Right.
You are paying for the years of rigorous, continuous training required to actually understand the complex data stream that scanner outputs. Reading live data, interpreting fuel trims, tracing intermittent electrical faults through a wiring diagram, ruling out false leads. That is intense, highly skilled mental labor.
The medical equivalent is looking at an MRI. I mean, The machine takes the picture in a few minutes, but you don't argue with the hospital bill because you know you are paying the radiologist for their years of medical school required to accurately read the shadows and the variations on that scan.
That is the perfect structural comparison. A scanner provides a code. It does not provide a solution. A code might read, misfire in cylinder 3. The scanner doesn't tell you why cylinder 3 is misfired.
Right, it just says there is a fire, not how it started.
Is it a fouled spark plug? Is it a dead ignition coil? Is it a cracked vacuum line? Is it a clogged fuel injector? Is it a burnt valve causing a loss of compression? The technician has to spend the next hour systematically testing each individual component, utilizing oscilloscopes and pressure gauges to determine the actual root cause.
It's detective work.
It is. When a customer demands that the diagnostic fee be waived because they agreed to the repair, they are loudly declaring that the technician's mental labor, their hard-earned expertise, is inherently worthless. You are buying a definitive conclusion, not a blind guess. Even if the customer declines the repair and takes the car home, they are walking away with a professional, documented, actionable opinion.
Which they can use anywhere.
Exactly. That intellectual property has immense tangible value.
Brandon Eagle summarizes this so perfectly in the text. He says, thinking is labor, finding is labor, knowing is labor. It completely reframes the transaction. But you know what happens when the dynamic shifts and the customer genuinely believes they are the ones providing the knowledge and the labor?
That brings us to situations loaded with outside parts and massive inside egos, which we can look at as transferred risk.
Yes, the transferred risk.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the My Mechanic Said customer. This specific scenario sounds like a waking nightmare for service management.
It is a structural nightmare. A vehicle rolls into the service drive, the customer pops the trunk, and it sounds like a toolbox falling down a flight of stairs. They present a loose, greasy part wrapped in an old towel alongside a cardboard box from some unverified discount online retailer.
Oh boy.
And then they deliver the classic line, "My mechanic Rick knows exactly what it is. You just need to install this part."
Translation: I have brought you a mystery box of unknown origin and a massive liability grenade. Please pull the pin for me.
If we look at the operational trap being set here, it is staggering. The customer is demanding dealer-level accountability, but they are supplying backyard-level guesswork.
They want all the protection with none of the costs.
Precisely. They expect the dealership to waive the diagnostic fee because Rick already figured it out. They want heavily discounted labor because the dealership is just bolting it on. And yet, they expect full, ironclad financial protection if the entire thing goes sideways.
Which it probably will.
Statistically, yes. If the dealership caves, installs that cheap internet part based entirely on Rick's unverified hypothesis, and the vehicle still doesn't start, the customer does not turn around and blame Rick.
No, of course not. They blame the last set of professional hands that touched the vehicle.
They blame the dealership 100% of the time.
They will immediately go online and write a scathing review. The crooked dealer took my money, bolted on a part, and didn't even fix my car. Eagle uses a brilliant medical analogy for this exact delusion, right?
He does.
You would never take your child to a veterinarian, get a diagnosis for a fever, and then walk into a human pediatrician's office with a printout from WebMD, demanding the surgeon just perform the operation based on the vet's opinion. The pediatrician would have you removed from the building.
The logical flaw in the customer's premise is glaring. If Rick genuinely possessed the expertise to accurately diagnose the vehicle, and if the part in the cardboard box was actually the correct high-quality component, the vehicle would not be sitting in the dealership's service lane.
Rick would have just fixed it.
Exactly. It is there because Rick failed. The only ethical and structurally professional response an advisor can give is a hard refusal. We do not install customer-supplied parts, and we absolutely do not work off of a third-party diagnosis. If our technicians touch this vehicle, our business owns the liability. Therefore, the process starts from scratch with our own diagnostic.
It is a necessary boundary that protects the technician, the business, and ultimately the customer's safety. But maintaining that boundary becomes exponentially harder when the advisor is confronted with the garage expert.
A deeply entrenched archetype.
Oh, totally. This is the archetype whose personal ego is so deeply and rigidly intertwined with their perceived knowledge of automobiles that they will refuse to accept objective empirical reality. Their credentials usually consist of watching a handful of heavily edited YouTube tutorials, successfully changing their own wiper blades a decade ago, and having an uncle who used to work on tractors.
And the defining structural characteristic of the garage expert is that they speak entirely in absolutes, even when faced with insurmountable physical evidence.
Give us the scenario.
Imagine this. The technician films a high-definition video showing dark oil actively dripping from a rear main seal. The advisor turns the screen around and shows the video directly to the garage expert.
Visual proof.
Undeniable visual proof. The expert crosses their arms and replies, "If it was leaking that bad, I would see spots on my garage floor. My floor is clean. There is no leak."
Ignoring what's right in front of their eyes.
Completely. Or another example. The vehicle is placed on a $50,000 Hunter alignment rack, the lasers measure the geometry, and the printout shows the toe angle is severely out of specification.
Hard data.
The expert looks at the data and says, "I drive it every day. I don't feel a shake in the steering wheel, so I don't need an alignment. You're trying to upsell me."
Oh, the fragility of the human ego in these moments is a fascinating psychological study. They are fundamentally confusing their subjective feelings with objective measurements.
A critical error in logic.
And they're also confusing a symptom with a root cause, or mixing up entirely different mechanical systems. I mean, an alignment fixes a vehicle pulling to one side and prevents uneven tire wear. Balancing the wheels fixes a vibration or a shake. But because the garage expert lacks the foundational knowledge to understand the difference, they automatically default to assuming the advisor is trying to scam them.
It's a defense mechanism.
Exactly. To protect their ego, they choose to trust their concrete garage floor over calibrated lasers and high-definition cameras.
This is where Eagle's operational coaching for service advisors becomes a masterclass in de-escalation. Show, don't argue.
Show, don't argue. I love that.
You cannot out-ego a garage expert. Attempting to structurally debate them only causes them to dig their heels in further. The advisor must simply present the empirical evidence. Here is the video of the oil actively forming a drip. Here's the laser printout of the suspension geometry.
Present the facts and step back.
Exactly. If the expert still vehemently denies reality, the advisor shifts the liability firmly and permanently back onto the customer's shoulders. You present the repair order and make them sign the decline waiver in ink. You look them in the eye and say, "Declining this repair does not make the mechanical failure disappear. It simply makes the consequences of that failure your sole responsibility instead of ours."
It is such a powerful, clean way to remove the emotion from the interaction. But, what happens when the fragile ego isn't about their car knowledge at all? What happens when the broken thing they're bringing to the counter isn't their vehicle, but their own personal life?
That transitions us into the realm of emotional tourists and fake friends.
Yes. Some customers utilize the service drive for deep-seated psychological baggage rather than mechanical maintenance.
The most prevalent structural example of this behavior is the "I'm never coming back" regular. Anyone who has ever worked in retail or public service recognizes this individual immediately.
Oh, absolutely.
They arrive and almost immediately initiate a massive theatrical tantrum in the waiting room. They complain that the complimentary coffee is the wrong temperature, the chairs are ergonomically incorrect, the ambient noise from the shop is giving them a headache, and the advisor they have worked with for 5 years is suddenly incompetent.
Building up the drama.
Exactly. They wait until there is a sufficient audience of other customers, and then they deliver their grand closing statement. "I am absolutely done with this dealership. I am never coming back here again." They storm out the doors, and precisely 4 months later, they pull into the drive for their next scheduled oil change.
I find the psychology behind this archetype absolutely riveting. I really do consider them emotional tourists. They are not visiting the dealership for routine automotive maintenance. They are utilizing the dealership as a stage to vent their broader life frustrations onto a captive, subordinate audience.
A displacement of anger.
Exactly. Their daily life is overwhelming. They feel powerless at their job. They are dissatisfied with their marriage. They are stressed about their finances. They cannot scream at their boss, and they cannot scream at their spouse. But they can scream at the service advisor because they know the advisor is contractually obligated to stand behind that podium and absorb the abuse.
It's an imbalance of power they exploit.
Right. The emotional tourist doesn't actually want a mechanical solution. They are desperately seeking a punching bag to validate their misery.
From an operational standpoint, indulging this customer is a massive drain on structural resources. They consume an inordinate amount of time. They actively destroy the morale of the employees forced to interact with them. And they consistently tank the precious CSI metrics we discussed earlier.
They're a net negative for everyone.
Inexperienced managers often try to save these customers. They over-apologize, they override company policies, and they give away hundreds of dollars in free services trying to win them over. And without fail, the survey still comes back as a blistering one-star review.
Because you cannot repair a deeply broken emotional state with a discounted tire rotation. You are trying to put a mechanical Band-Aid on a psychological wound. Eagle's advice to advisors dealing with this specific manipulation is incredibly liberating. He says, if someone repeatedly threatens to walk out of your life and take their business elsewhere, the healthiest possible thing a business can do is hold the door open for them.
It requires a paradigm shift for management to structurally recognize that a customer can be a net negative. If an individual's only contribution to the business ecosystem is extreme stress, verbal abuse, and weaponized surveys, facilitating their graceful exit to a competitor is the most effective employee retention strategy available.
Let them be the competitor's problem.
Precisely. But there is a flip side to the aggressively angry regular, and it relies on a much softer, yet equally manipulative structural tactic. We have to look at Mr. Best Friend.
Oh, the weaponization of fake charm. I despise this one. This is the customer who strides in and immediately showers the advisor with overwhelming, completely unearned praise. Jimmy, my guy, you always take such great care of me. You are absolutely the best advisor in this whole building. We're basically family at this point.
It's a calculated setup.
It really is. It provides a great dopamine hit for the advisor for about 3 seconds, right until the final invoice prints. And then the hook drops. The customer leans over the counter, lowers their voice, and says, hey man, since we're so tight, can you hook me up with a friends and family discount on this brake job?
It reveals that the entire interaction was a transactional performance. They are attempting to purchase tangible financial favors using counterfeit friendship as currency.
Such a great way to put it. Counterfeit friendship.
And the true structural test of this dynamic happens the moment the advisor holds the line. When the advisor politely responds, I really appreciate the kind words, but I am not authorized to alter the pricing structure, the mask immediately slips. The artificial charm evaporates instantly. The best advisor ever is suddenly accused of being rigid, unhelpful, and ungrateful.
It proves conclusively that their loyalty was never directed at the advisor as a human being. Their loyalty was exclusively attached to the imaginary discount they were plotting to extract. Charm is not legal tender. If a customer's proclaimed friendship is entirely dependent on how much money an employee can shave off their bill, they're not a friend. They are a hostile negotiator wearing a disguise.
Indulging that behavior creates a highly unethical two-tier pricing system within the business. It means that loud, manipulative individuals receive cheaper repairs than the honest, quiet, respectful customers who accept the stated value of the labor. True, sustainable loyalty structurally survives full price.
That's a great rule. Loyalty survives full price.
And the concept of manipulating the final price brings us to a related, highly uncomfortable structural phenomenon that plays out at the cashier's desk. The couples scam.
This one is just pure, unadulterated relationship dysfunction being weaponized to bully a cashier. It is the classic good cop, bad cop routine, usually performed by a married couple.
Walk us through the mechanics of the scam.
So partner A brings the vehicle into the drive in the morning, sits down with the advisor, listens to the detail estimate, and clearly verbally approves a $1,000 repair. The work is executed perfectly. Then at 5 p.m., partner B arrives to pick up the vehicle. Partner B looks at the final invoice and erupts into a theatrical rage in the middle of the showroom. We were never told it would be this much. This is absolute highway robbery.
Yeah.
You people are scamming us, and I refuse to pay this.
They are deliberately attempting to frame the situation as a massive structural failure of business communication.
But it's not. Structurally, it is a catastrophic failure of marital communication, conveniently staged at the service counter. They are pretending that partner A was duped or misled, providing partner B with a justification to attack the final invoice. The goal is to create such a loud, uncomfortable scene that management capitulates and reduces the bill just to make the screaming stop.
It's an extortion tactic.
It is a coordinated off-Broadway play performed for a discount. It is theatrical denial. If you are in a partnership and one partner says yes to a repair, the unit said yes. That's how functioning adulthood works. It is deeply unfair to drag an underpaid service cashier into the middle of your inability to communicate financial decisions with your own spouse.
Which brings us to the broader ways consumers use societal norms to structurally bully businesses. Let's examine the weaponization of slogans and systems. We have to start with what is arguably the most dangerous, misunderstood phrase in retail history.
Let me guess. The customer is always right. That phrase, originally coined over a century ago by retailers like Harry Gordon Selfridge and Marshall Field, was meant to encourage businesses to take customer complaints seriously. It was about listening to feedback and stocking the goods people actually wanted to buy. It was a macroeconomic philosophy.
A market indicator.
Yes, but it has been completely distorted. In the hands of an entitled consumer, it is no longer a philosophy. It is a heavy crowbar used to force businesses to break safety protocols, violate laws, and assume massive, unwarranted liability.
Consider the specific scenario Eagle outlines in the text, which perfectly illustrates the structural distortion. A dealership offers a complimentary drive-through automatic car wash after a service. A customer arrives in a heavy-duty truck. Strapped to the roof of this truck are several long, heavy PVC and metal pipes extending over the windshield.
A disaster waiting to happen.
The service valet correctly informs the customer that the truck cannot go through the automatic wash because the spinning brushes will catch the piping, rip it off the roof, severely damage the multi-million-dollar wash equipment, and potentially destroy the truck itself.
And the customer, without missing a single beat, aggressively shouts, "I'm the customer." And the customer is always right. Take the piping down yourself and hand wash my truck. That's your job.
Let's systematically dismantle the sheer structural absurdity of that demand.
Please do.
The customer is commanding the staff to perform extra, highly physical, completely uncompensated labor that is explicitly not a service offered by the dealership. They are demanding the business assume all the liability if those heavy pipes slip and shatter the windshield, scratch the paint, or injure an employee's back.
So they want free, dangerous labor.
The customer is attempting to use a retail slogan to override the basic laws of physics, workplace safety regulations, and common sense.
The absolute truth is that the customer is always right. Stops the exact microsecond that physical safety, legal liability, and established company policy begin.
It is a hard stop.
The advisor has to step in, hold their ground, and clearly communicate, "We are more than happy to provide the courtesy wash for your truck, but our staff cannot touch or remove your cargo. That is entirely your responsibility. Once you safely remove it and secure it, we will put the vehicle through." You have to put the responsibility back exactly where it belongs. Slogans do not possess the power to rewrite physical reality.
Another structural method customers employ to rewrite reality at the expense of the system is by becoming what Eagle terms the coupon strategist, or more aggressively, the last-second dropper.
Oh, I hate the last-second dropper.
Yeah.
These are the individuals who have a brightly colored 15% off coupon burning a hole in their pocket from the very moment they pull onto the lot. But they strategically choose not to hand it over during the initial write-up. They wait.
They hold it in reserve.
They wait through the entire diagnostic process. They wait until the repair is completely finished, the vehicle is washed and pulled around to the front, the massive final invoice is fully printed, the state and local taxes are calculated, and the advisor is literally holding out a pen for their signature. And then they dramatically slap the wrinkled coupon onto the counter like they just played a winning hand in poker and say, "Oh, I totally forgot I have this."
In their mind, they believe they are executing a brilliant structural maneuver. They think they are orchestrating a gotcha moment against a giant corporation, preventing the advisor from artificially inflating the initial estimate to absorb the discount.
They think they're outsmarting the system.
But they completely fail to realize the software reality of what they just triggered. They are causing massive operational delays. To apply that coupon, the advisor cannot just subtract $20 with a desk calculator. They have to completely void the closed repair order in the system.
Which takes time.
They have to reopen the secure dealer management system, manually dive into the individual parts and labor lines, adjust the pricing to reflect the specific discount parameters, recalculate the intricate tax structure, wait for the archaic system to process the changes, and then print an entirely new multi-page invoice. They're wasting precious time, paper, and ink.
And the punchline to all of this is, they received the exact same monetary discount they would have received if they simply handed the coupon over 4 hours ago at check-in. They did not save a single extra penny. They simply introduced a massive layer of friction into the process.
It's pure inefficiency.
And the true victims of this tactic aren't just the frustrated advisors. The victims are the other customers.
Exactly the point. Every single minute the advisor spends fighting with the software to unwind and rebuild that invoice is a minute structurally stolen from the quiet, respectful customer standing patiently in line right behind the coupon dropper.
And the behavior often escalates, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. They attempt to stack multiple discounts structurally. They want to use an expired coupon they found in a drawer, combined with a mailer from 3 months ago, combined with a senior citizen discount.
A whole deck of cards.
When the advisor points to the bold print on the paper and enforces the terms, limit one coupon per visit, cannot be combined with other offers, the customer throws a tantrum demanding a manager.
They treat the phrase cannot be combined as a playful suggestion, and expired as an invitation to negotiate. It is exhausting, and it just lacks basic societal decency. Which really brings us to the ultimate turning point, the entire structural purpose of this deep dive.
The resolution.
Exactly. How do we avoid being the villain in these scenarios? How do we evolve into self-aware, highly effective customers?
We need to transition from analyzing the text to speaking directly to you, the listener. You participate in the economy every single day. You buy groceries, you visit the dentist, you take flights, and yes, you get your car service. You are constantly navigating complex structural systems that you did not personally design.
And Eagle provides a great tool for this.
He provides what he calls a minimum decency guide. Think of it as a behavioral cheat code for vastly improving not only your own consumer experience, but the daily structural lives of the workers you interact with.
The guide is built on 4 core pillars of respect. Let's break them down. First, you must respect the schedule. Show up at the time you agreed to. Remember that arriving excessively early does not make you royalty. And arriving late does not make the staff the villains for not waiting for you.
It's an allocation of resources.
Second, respect the boundary. When a professional advisor looks you in the eye and says, we charge a diagnostic fee to evaluate this issue, or we cannot safely put a truck with scaffolding through our wash, believe them the first time. Endlessly rewording the question will not alter the laws of physics, and it will not change corporate policy.
Third, respect the established structural process. Hand your coupons and discount codes over at the initial write-up so the paperwork is accurate from the start. Ask your detailed questions before you verbally approve a $2,000 engine repair, not 3 hours later when the invoice is finalized.
Don't wait until the very end.
And if you genuinely trust the opinion of your backyard mechanic more than the specialized technicians at the dealership, then let your backyard mechanic perform the labor. Do not demand that a business assume the massive legal liability for someone else's unverified guesswork.
And fourth, and perhaps the most vital pillar, respect the human. The person standing behind that service counter is a living, breathing human being. They have a complex brain, a tired body, a family waiting for them at home, and a breaking point. They are not a robot programmed to serve you. They are not a magician who can conjure parts out of thin air, and they are absolutely not your designated emotional punching bag.
Eagle has an incredible exercise in the book to reinforce this structural reality.
The mirror exercise. I want you, the person listening right now, to really visualize and internalize this.
It requires genuine structural empathy.
I want you to imagine you are sitting at your desk at your current job. Think about exactly what you do for a living. Maybe you are an accountant, a graphic designer, a nurse, or a teacher.
Visualize your daily workflow.
Now imagine I walk into your workplace 45 minutes before your shift actually begins and loudly demand that you drop everything you are doing to serve me immediately because I am already here and in a rush. Imagine I show up 10 minutes after you have locked your office door, banging on the glass, demanding you boot up your computer and pull up a file real quick because my lack of planning is now your absolute emergency.
Or imagine I march into your workspace and scream in your face that the customer is always right in an attempt to structurally force you to violate your company's strict safety regulations or break the law.
Imagine I butter you up, call you my absolute best friend, and then turn incredibly vicious and insulting the very second you refuse to give me a heavy discount on your services that you are literally not authorized to give.
If you experienced even one of those structural scenarios in your own profession, you would go home completely exhausted.
You would call your friends and say, you would not believe the entitled, delusional jerk I had to deal with today. You would swear up and down that you do not get paid enough to tolerate that level of profound disrespect, and you would be 100% correct. So the ultimate question is, Why do we collectively accept this behavior as the standard operating procedure when interacting with service workers?
When you actively choose to structurally change that dynamic, when you walk through those sliding doors with actual deliberate self-awareness, you fundamentally shift the nature of the transaction. You transform the interaction from a hostage situation where the advisor is merely trying to survive your demands without getting punished by a bad survey into a collaborative partnership.
It changes everything.
When you hand over your keys with clear communication, respect the necessary diagnostic process, and treat the advisor with basic human dignity, you will structurally receive vastly superior service. Why? Because the advisor will actively go to bat for you. They will fight for your warranty coverage, they will communicate effectively with the technicians, and they will prioritize your vehicle simply because you are the rare bright spot in a grueling, structurally flawed day filled with friction.
It is the absolute truth. True, exceptional customer service begins with being an exceptional customer. And that brings us to a final, slightly chilling but incredibly effective revelation tucked away at the very end of Brandon Eagle's text.
The ultimate structural reality check.
It is something that should make every single one of us pause and take a deep breath before we decide to throw a tantrum over an expired coupon.
Yes, the structural permanence of your digital footprint.
We tend to operate under the illusion that our bad moments in public happen in a vacuum. We think that we can scream at a cashier, storm out of the building, and the entire incident just vanishes into the ether. But modern businesses possess very long, very detailed digital memories. When you walk up to that service desk and confidently state your name, the advisor types it into their dealer management system. And instantly, before you even hand over the keys, a screen pops up.
And that screen contains an exhaustive historical record. It logs every single repair you have ever declined structurally. It tracks every appointment you booked and then failed to show up for. And most importantly, it contains detailed, prominent notes regarding every single behavioral incident.
It's all there. The staff instantly knows your character. They know if you are the customer who aggressively tries to stack expired coupons at the last second. They know if you are the garage expert who constantly argues with video evidence. They know exactly what kind of psychological warfare they're about to endure before you even finish saying hello.
So we want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over the very next time you find yourself standing at a counter ready to hand over your keys.
What does your screen say about you? When your name is typed into the system, are you remembered as the reasonable, collaborative adult who respected boundaries? Or are you the legendary, highlighted cautionary tale that the veteran advisors still warn the new hires about? The next time you are inconvenienced, the next time the process doesn't go exactly your way, you have a critical choice to make. Will you choose maturity or will you choose ego?
Because at the end of the day, when you pull your vehicle into that service drive, the diagnostic machinery isn't just pointed at the engine block. It is pointed directly at your character. And the structural results of that diagnostic are completely up to you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Brandon Eagle, your guide to customer service. Grab your copy today on Amazon Kindle or as an Amazon bookstore paperback. It's a fast-paced, humorous, and highly practical survival guide that cuts right through all that corporate fluff, teach you how to actually handle customers and build a strong professional presence. Ultimately, it's about transforming everyday service industry nightmares into empowered professional partnerships. This is absolutely a must-read for anyone wanting to level up their customer service skills and confidence. So go ahead and grab your copy today on Amazon Kindle or as an Amazon bookstore paperback.
Thank you for listening to Discover You Radio's discussions. We'd like to invite you to research was spotlighted on this episode. And if they have a website, join their mailing list. You never know. They just may become the next legendary legacy through Discover You Radio. Because listeners like you made it possible. Thank you for your support.